Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Everybody calls me Jake, so if you see me around, just call me Jake. I don't even remember my own title half the time at this point. I had the pleasure of getting to learn a lot about this organization as I prep for this talk, and it's worth noting that I already knew quite a bit about Cairo, given the University of Utah's connection to it over the years, and we're so honored to get to host it again this year, and I hope that is something that we continue to do in the years ahead, because this is an incredibly important organization, and water and hydrology are essential to the life of this state. And I want to illustrate that by starting in a very different place, maybe an odd place. One of my favorite book series is George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. You might know it as HBO's Game of Thrones series, although I will note that if you watch the series, please do yourself a favor and read the books. Eventually he will finish the series. That's a joke for those of you who are fans of it, but it's an amazing book series, and I mention it because that is a fantasy world where weather exists in extreme ways. For example, in George R.R. Martin's universe, sometimes winter lasts 100 years. And that's why the main characters of the series, the Stark family, their family motto is, winter is coming. They always are preparing for the perpetual winter that could wipe out everyone. But in Utah this year, we learned there's something that might be even more frightening than a century of winter. And that's when winter doesn't come at all. We didn't have much winter this year. It barely snowed. And just like the Starks know that a perpetual winter can wipe you out, we know that no winter at all is a threat to us, because winter is life. Winter is snowpack. Winter is storage, right? Winter sets the risk for wildfire. Winter supports our economy in 1,000 ways and keeps our community safe. And winter is just water born again each year. And so I thought a lot about Martin's work because I like to think about how fantasy and science fiction help us to imagine what could be and imagine what we do. And I like to think that that's what Cairo does at its heart. You're a bunch of smarties who love to build tools that help us predict what will come, to help us see what is on the horizon. And that's amazing, because that's exactly what we need, right? How might we have prepared for this winter that never was? How might the West have prepared for it? And this is not just a fantasy story. I grew up in Montana in the 1980s, and in the 1980s, it started off where it wouldn't stop snowing. We had these pictures of 10, 15-foot snowbanks beside the road. And then in the mid-80s, it just stopped snowing altogether, and we went into a massive drought that almost burned the Yellowstone National Park to the ground. And it was a decade of extremes. And the state was not prepared for it, and the West was not prepared for it. And I think to this day, it still ripples forward. Prediction is how we protect, how we save, how we are prepared for what might come. A few thoughts before I hand the mic off to the next person who will have more interesting things to say. I do want to express my gratitude for you all being here today, for NOAA, for all of the different wonderful organizations that are a part of this and are helping to support it. Google and Linker, right? University of Alabama, obviously being crucial to this. These things don't just happen by accident, and I'm very grateful for them. Two, I want to note that this is really the model, and I mean that sincerely. We are in uncertain times in higher education, and uncertainty is frightening, isn't it? But uncertainty is also a driver. It's also an opportunity. And while there are forces that are trying to change higher education, fundamentally, some of those changes are changes that we're already well on our way to engaging. For example, when I look at Cairo, I see a collection of researchers who value core basic research, which is obviously what we're excited about in higher education, but they also understand that translation is a huge part of that. How does that connect back to others? How does it connect to our major organizations? How does it connect to industry? How does it connect to ultimately the society, the communities that we serve? And I think as we get through this moment of change, that's the model I would like to see across more research areas, that intersection. And I don't view that as a frightening change. I view it as a powerful change. Higher education is an evolution. I like to start off talks sometimes by saying, 1,000 years from now, what fields will still exist? Will your field still exist? Will any field that we know today still exist? The answer is probably no. There'll be other fields. AI is already showing us that there are massive transformations underway. And I say that to say that higher education has never finished evolving, and it probably never will. They say a great teacher never arrives. Scholars should never arrive. We should be elastic and dynamic and ever-changing. I'm a communications scholar. Actually, when I was on the Cairo website, I saw somebody I know, Travis, who's also a communications scholar, just won one of your fellowships. I actually knew him back when he was a student. That's a sign of how old I am. And as a communications scholar, we don't believe in the sacred. We don't think our field will exist, maybe even another century, and we're not worried about that. We're just going to keep evolving into something else, right? We started off as English, and then became public speaking, right? And then became speech communication, and then became communication, and who knows what the next century will bring, but it will be something different than it is today. And I say that to say that change is good, and that change is powerful, and that higher education is at its best when we realize we have not arrived, that we are heading towards something more. Because the opposite of that is we begin to think that where we're at right now is so finished that we are not reflexive, right? And that will kill higher education. That will kill our mission faster than anything. The third thing that I want to note is what I think events like this really do at the end of the day. It's a time to learn about a bunch of amazing work. It's a time to understand Cairo, its mission, and how valuable it is. But I think deeper than that, it's a time to get to know others. It's a time to get to know the new people. It's why I love how you started off by asking who all here is new, because it's the new that makes something like this work, right? We are always in the process of handing things off to the next generation. I love that. This university, it's more the students' university than it is mine, right? It's more their world than it is mine. And this organization, it is more the people that are here today for the first time in many ways than it is for the people that have been here 4 times. And that's simply to say, because you want it to continue well into the future. And some of those are the folks that will take that baton. And so this is about community. This is about getting to know the student that's here for the first time. This is about mentoring, building connections. That's the fabric of it all. I hope you'll take the time to do that. I hope you'll find this to be a wonderful environment to do it. That's why I think it's been so successful, is that it proves to be so. And I look forward to seeing you around the conference. You'll see me pop back in here just a little bit later today. There are 4 conferences at the University of Utah today, and I am giving the opening talk for 3 of those. I apologize if you're at any of the others. It will be a different talk each time. I just want to note that. I can't use George R.R. Martin each time. Scratch that. I probably could. I know a lot about the books. Maybe I'm going to challenge myself to try to do it now at each one. So if you come to another one, that'll be a running joke that only you and I will know. Okay, so I'll pop into those, but I'll be back later today because this one I think is so special, not only because there's calm people here, which I love, but because I think it's a community that's fully realized. So thank you for letting me be here, and enjoy your day.